premise, if you will, is that we were not born prejudiced, that we have been taught, whether consciously or unconsciously, through our friends, our families, schools, religious institutions, and the media, about how we're supposed to understand the world, how we're supposed to interpret what we see. And so that learning contextualizes our lens. The lens is not a neutral thing. The lens is definitely shaped and refined by this socialization process, if you will. So the way that we approach it then is that we ask people to begin to consciously and explicitly unlearn the prejudices that they've acquired over their lifetime. It's a very difficult process. We make no bones about it. This change is a process. It's slow, but it's very important. We say that it takes a lifetime. We know that conflict is possible, but it doesn't have to be negative. The thing that we talk a lot about is this idea of creating an environment that's safe and uncomfortable. Some people say, well, I don't want it to be uncomfortable. But the reality is that these topics are uncomfortable. But we need to hold on to that and grapple with it and move through it. But we can do that in a safe context. So that's a very important piece I wanted to share. And then, again, echoing on what you've heard earlier, and this is hard for some people, we have to assume goodwill. We need to reserve our negative judgments and our first impressions in order for us to begin to bridge the gap, if you will, to begin to have the dialogue. And I wanted to share those things because as I was watching the documentary again last week, I was reminded by how the people in this video, how the family practiced all these things as they try to work towards understanding Barbara's new chapter in her life. The girls, the parents of Barbara, they all engaged in this very important process towards this understanding. And I saw this in 3 particular areas that I wanted to highlight. So the first thing that I saw was that they had the ability and the willingness to ask the questions. The girls asked a lot of questions, and they even sometimes asked if it was okay to ask those questions. They demonstrated a form of sensitivity. But equally important when you ask the questions is asking yourself, would I like to have this question asked of me in this way? So we need to be very thoughtful about how we approach asking those questions. I also wanted to mention, too, that there is, it's important also to not ask them on behalf of the entire community. That's just unfair because they have a very specific perspective on this matter. It's one of many voices within the community, but no way are they representing the entire community. So be very thoughtful about that situation as well. The other thing that I saw in the documentary that I think could be used in us when we engage in this conversation is answering those questions. We saw in the documentary that the parents were willing to answer their questions, and they didn't make them feel bad for asking those very genuine and curious questions that they had. We certainly heard that Barbara was open to answering those questions as well. This really helped everybody get to a point where they felt more comfortable in the situation at hand. And I even recall that I think the oldest daughter, Chelsea, I think is her name, by having this environment happening, she was able to actually advocate on behalf of her aunt in class. I think it was in health class when the issue of the transgender community came up. So we saw what that resulted in. So the third thing that I saw that I think is also really important for all of us when we engage in these conversations is the ability and the willingness to create an environment where the asking and the answering takes place. Again, I wanted to highlight that asking the questions is not just simply asking questions. Again, think about not asking them to express their opinion on behalf of the entire group. Timing, the nonverbals are equally important in addition to the words that we use when we ask these questions. And then last, the reality is that, yes, there are no dumb questions, but there are certainly a lot of potentially insensitive and inappropriate questions, and we need to also be very thoughtful of that. I know that I believe Glad it was that kind of helped understand this context by doing this inversion process. So some questions that we would, that some people may ask, if you invert it to a kind of a straight context, you can see how ridiculous that is. So, for example, a question that you can invert is your heterosexuality a phase, and how old do you think you'll be when you grow out of it? Or do you think therapy would help you to examine your heterosexuality and perhaps even cure it? As you can hear, those are really ridiculous questions. But those are the questions if you replace heterosexual to gay. You know, a lot of people ask that, and they don't understand why that's inappropriate. So that inversion practice could be very helpful for people who are straight to think about the appropriate nature of asking those questions. For the purposes of time, I'm not going to go into the specifics of how ADL has used this video, but we do have a training activity that's all written out for you, and it should be on the No Dumb Questions website. So check it out and see if you have any questions. Let me know. We can talk about it offline or at the end. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Esther. That was really wonderful. Yeah, and there is a discussion guide that was created by the Anti-Defamation League available at nodumbquestions.com. And there's also another discussion guide that was created by the Unitarian Universalist Association that's up on the site as well.